So, uh, back to in-person podcasting again, thankfully.
Yeah.
Today I actually have one of my good friends, longtime friend, someone I've personally got a chance to see grow over time, and I'm letting him just introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does now.
Hey guys, my name is Justin Alexander. I actually went to school with Tim back in nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
graduated from Brentwood High School. I went to SUNY Geneseo for undergrad, and right now I'm currently getting my master's in school counseling at St. Bonaventure. So when I'm in the gym, I'm there typically, I'd say 5, 6 days a week, but leaning on 6 right now. So things have been pretty good. Not too shabby.
Yeah, man. I mean, not for nothing. Seeing your transformation over time has been incredible. One of the things that stands out to me the most is that even on the days that where you're walking in, I'll notice you're like extra tired, head's hanging a little lower. It's just like, yeah, no, I'm here. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah. What was one of the main things when you were going through your transformation that kept you disciplined towards your results? Because your transformation again is incredible. You talk a little bit about it, like as far as like the weight loss and the weight gain and everything else.
I would say thank you for that. When I think about my journey, it came off in a way where it's like, you know, was it 3 years ago? No, nearly 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Started 2021. So it was the end of like a 3 year relationship I was in for quite some time. Pretty ending, I would say. But all things considered, if you can sleep easy at night, then you know that you didn't do anything terrible, um, which was pretty good. I started January 2021. I took that program I was doing, Jeremy Ethers, Built with Science, his program. And then the program was so successful for me that I actually got featured on his website. So if you go there now, I'm still there.
Oh, it's
Like, yeah,
incredible.
like I'm still featured on the website. So that program, it was like 6, 7 days a week typically. They want you to take rest days, and I would take them, but I felt like I would still come in. Like my rest days were still like cardio
Uh,
days. So I went from weighing in at, I think I was like 157, 158, around like 20 to 23% body fat. And I know by the time that I finished, when I was hanging out with you, I was 13%, like 148, like just shy of 148. But you got to find your balance of what weight makes sense. I feel like once I got down to 148, it was like, not that it was too little, but I started getting more headaches.
mhm.
I was getting really, really tired. I would come in like my head be hanging a lot lower. I was just not necessarily myself. So shredding down to that felt pretty good, like in the very beginning. But then, like in terms of like maintaining it, that was just something I felt to be very, very different.
I can fully relate to that just because when I went through my extreme lean phase when I was 180 185 and I was at 10% body fat,
Yeah.
leanest I ever been, felt sick, felt weak, felt tired all the time,
Mm.
and then having to regain that weight again is when you just find your own natural sources of energy.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I wanted to have you on is that even as lean as you got, you felt very tired, you felt sick and everything else.
Yeah.
What So what was the process of you regaining the weight back again?
Process I would say of regaining, it felt more of like a dirty bulk, but I call it a dirty bulk because I mainly eat whatever I want for the majority of the time. The only thing I did do like throughout that entire process that I will say, is I had the same thing for lunch every single day for an entire year.
Which was
It was a Cajun Alfredo, like linguine pasta that I
ooh,
had, and I would sometimes I throw in like Cajun spice or paprika, and I would have like some turkey, some ham, and then like for the protein source itself was always ground turkey.
mm,
Like I just cooked my own food, but I just wanted to make sure that like whatever like I had for lunch, it was just like very consistent. So I couldn't think like, oh, it's definitely like what I ate. It was me not training hard enough to me not do what I needed to be doing if I had the same thing for lunch every single day. Breakfast wise, I would say it was relatively the same. I had like an omelet, nothing too
okay.
crazy, like ham, some turkey, some fruit, with apple or an orange or clementine or something like that. But for lunch, literally just the same thing. And then dinner, it would vary. If I had like salmon or I had chicken or I had some kind of like steak or something like that. But consistently for lunch for an entire year. Sometimes I actually just had it today. I just had the same thing I had normally had for lunch, but minus the ground turkey because I have to go shopping. Um, had the same thing for lunch every single day. But that process of me getting back to the weight I wanted, I toned down on the cardio just a tad. Wasn't too much. Like I would still do it at the end of my workouts. Like I'd still get in my solid 15 to 20 minutes.
Mhm.
But I would say outside of that, it's really just the same consistent strength training. And like, here and there, I would have like maybe a bit more snacks that I normally wouldn't have. So right now I'm fluctuating. I'm right at, I think like 156, 155. So I typically like to sit right around there. I think even with this winter coming up, I'll probably maybe cut down to like maybe 150, 152, which typically is the time that people both, but I feel like in that journey of me getting to the physique that I wanted, I feel like now I'm arrived. Like I'm here at this point. So there isn't much more for me to go in the sense of like, I want to be any bigger than I am right now. I wouldn't necessarily want to be like leaner than I am right now. And if I do, it's really just like that 13, 14% body fat mark. Cause now I know what 13 looks like and I know what it feels like. And it's not necessarily always a great feeling, but I feel like
Yeah.
14 to 15% for me personally, it's actually pretty good. Cause me from high school, I was 120 and then I went away to college and then I blew up to 150. And I haven't, with the exception of me getting to 148, I have never been under 140, like 150 in like the past 10 years.
And you
That was,
say
yeah.
you feel like you're your healthiest right now, or your strongest, or like basically like, or you're like a maintenance stage.
I'm definitely maintenance stage. I would say in terms of like strength, like overall physicality, I'd say I'm about like a solid like 75 to 80% of like where I know I could be. Because when I think of my peak of where I was at 13%,
Mm.
you know, I was squatting easy 335, deadlifting easy 360, 366, and my bench was like I could actually rep out more than 2 reps of 225. But you
Okay.
know, weighing at 148, like 148, 150 pounds, that's very like difficult to do. You know, so me thinking about that consciously, I was like, oh, you know, there becomes a level of how much more do I want to gain out of like what my diminishing returns are?
Yeah, risk reward.
Yeah, my risk reward, exactly. So me thinking about, oh, you know, I'm 148 pounds, I'm 150 pounds. Like, yeah, I was what 25 or 26 at the time, 27 now. It's like, how much how much stronger do I want to get? And then what am I worth? Like, what is willing to risk in terms of like where I'm going to try to get to go? Like, I want to get to like a 400-pound deadlift, which I probably could do if I like really just intensely focus on like just specifically that lift.
Yeah.
But then when I think about it, at the cost of what? My back and my joints and
One wrong
everything.
move.
Yeah, and then my disc just flips out of place, and it's just like it's a bad thing. So when I think about it now, like I'm comfortable at my working weights that I have for all my lifts. Like I've already hit all the points that I wanted to hit. So like now I kind of like tone things back a little bit, do a bit more cardio, do a bit more like just overall just mobility stuff. Nothing that's too strenuous for me in the sense of like me training for this very specific purpose. Because during that time it was me just going gung ho on everything. It's like, you know, no excuses, no days off, no bullshit, no nothing. Because I was coming out of that like demon era of like, you know, terrible relationship.
Oh yeah.
You know, coming to this. And I was like, let me just, you know, get back on my grind and do what I need to do and put myself first. And I don't mean to say demon era in terms of like it was a terrible relationship. It was a great relationship for what it was.
No, but you
Was,
said the right. You said one of the main reasons why I really wanted to have you on is because you did the right thing after the heartbreak, which was you actually went and generated like you focused on yourself.
Yeah.
Majority of men our age who get their heart broken will then go out to the clubs and fuck as many people as they can.
Yeah.
They will go out and they will try to numb themselves as much as they can versus actually working on themselves and developing a better character after their heartbreak. And then meaning if you know if shit hit the fan and you really lost yourself a little bit, and it's going to take some time. It's not going to take like an overnight fix, or it's not going to be a month. It's not going to be 2 months. It may take 6 months to a year for you to fully rediscover yourself again, but it's not impossible to.
Yeah.
It's more, you're more than capable of healing without damaging others in the same process.
Yeah. Because you have to think about like your coping skills. And I think I'm grateful for the people that I have around me. And then one of those people specifically is my brother, just in me seeing like the things that he does. He's not necessarily like disciplined in the sense of like him working out. Cause like the joke is like, I'm like the bigger guy. I mean, well, he's only 5'4", I'm 5'2". So it's hilarious. But in the sense of like discipline with working out and doing things we need to do and like keeping that consistency, you know, I learned a lot from him and just his past relationships and like the women he would be bringing home and like all the stuff we see. Cause I lived with him and my mom, you know, before I'm like our terrible housing market situation that we're in before I went to move out. But that's a different topic for a different day. With him specifically, I watched him go through that lifestyle of like going out to parties and going out to clubs and just bringing girls home and doing all that nonsense. And not to get you wrong, during that time, I did have that phase of doing that. And it wasn't fun. And it wasn't fun because I already knew who I was as a person in the sense of you're a committed kind of guy, like where you get into a relationship and you want to be with someone for the sake of them and their life and your life, and you're merging those things together. So you're helping them accomplish their goals and they're helping you with theirs, and you're essentially growing and building a life together. That's just the kind of person I am. I've always been that way. But when you take that away from that person or from anybody, and then you try to like, I want not necessarily say be yourself, but be the opposite of how you normally operate and conduct yourself, puts you in a weird headspace. And it makes you feel as if like, oh, like I can just like manipulate and change like this aspect of me. But my father during that night of everything like that went down, he was like, don't feel as though that you have to change who you are because something didn't necessarily work out the way that you wanted it to. So me hearing that from him and his wisdom and like what he's been through in his life, because my parents went through a terrible divorce and all that stuff when I was 4 years old. It was nice hearing that coming from him because obviously like the short joke is it's like really like you're giving me advice about relationships. It's like you over here causing a divorce. But besides that, it's like me thinking about what I wanted to move towards, the person that I wanted to become for myself, and like me actually putting myself first in everything I was doing. I think part of me did get a little bit lost in the sauce of that whole relationship when I was there. I'm not necessarily focusing on all my goals and everything I need to do. I had a really good job. I was in school. I was doing everything I needed to do. But then when stuff like that happens, like when you have a heartbreak or you have like a family issue or anything for any guy or any girl that's out there, it puts things into perspective to you in terms of like what is important. And that isn't to say that that person isn't important. And I hope that they accomplish everything that they are supposed to accomplish in life and they have a very nice, lovely, virtuous everything that they want to have in life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm supposed to be with them or they're supposed to be with me. And I can be happy in knowing that they'll have what is intended for them and I'll have what's intended for me. And our coming together or clash, I guess I would say, it taught me something. I think any experience that you have with people is supposed to teach you something. You may not know what it's supposed to teach you, and it may come months, even years, or whatever after the time that like that separation happened between two people. But eventually something will hit you where like, oh, like that was what my lesson was. That was what I was supposed to be taught. That was what I was supposed to be able to take away from this person and then move on to whatever's to come next. But in terms of like what you said and like coming devices, having terrible coping skills, and just basically fucking anything that moves. Definitely not a way that I would want to conduct myself or I would ever even tell people to conduct themselves. Granted, people are grown adults. Yeah, would choose to do whatever they want to do.
Humans will be humans.
Yeah, but me personally, I don't necessarily agree that's the way that you should move. When you move that way and you don't have that level of like, for guys we call it dick discipline, it's you just don't, you're giving into your internal instincts of like what it is that you want as opposed to like really focusing on what you know that you should be doing. So it's kind of like a cop out in terms of like, oh, like let me just focus on this other than like the other 900 million things that you know that you need to do, like making more money or getting a better job or getting better whatever it is that you're trying to do. So that helped me in the sense of getting my education and everything in order because I started my master program that year and I graduate this May. So like me going through that whole, thank you, me going through that whole transition and then moving with that and then getting my body in order, getting my mind in order. It was pretty much all I needed to just move. It just felt like a flip of a switch.
Goal oriented.
Yeah, very goal oriented.
No, and that's commendable, because it's in a generation where it's everyone gets lost in their sauce, they get lost in their own feelings, they get lost very easily. And then one of the easiest ways for people to even get lost is through this damn device here with the amount of comparisons, with the amount of, well, this person is like this person is that. Why can I be that exact same way? Why can that, why are they getting all the attention? Why am I all these other reasons to, I want to say, not appreciate what you truly see in the mirror versus if you actually step away from that and diminish your ego and focus a little bit more on developing not only just better the coping mechanisms such as working out, meditating, reading books. Some of the best books I've read lately, Charlemagne, well, I've not read lately, but read before, Charlemagne the God Shook Ones, when it comes down to understanding your anxiety. Discipline Equals Freedom from Jocko Willink. You Can't Hurt Me from David Goggins. Those are all books that are not only easier to read because they're very relatable, but also they also have a little bit more of like that extra kick of understanding not only that you need to really do the work and healing within so you don't hurt other people, and understanding that also when you see a hurt person or you see someone who's struggling at the same time and they lash out on you, know that it's not on something that you did, knowing that it's something that they're just projecting from their own internal pain. And one thing that I've noticed also when it comes down to your character development is you don't really lash out on the people themselves. Like you focus more on your individual stuff. I could be, again, from what I've seen in general.
Mm.
But do you feel that is that something else that you're one of a little bit more not susceptible to, but you find yourself that you're easier to develop a little bit more of a clearer source of communication?
I would say, in you saying that, like, I think anybody's susceptible to it, regardless of who they are or what they work or what their stature or whatever it is that they have going on for themselves. You know, um, I think for me, when I think about just the way in which I conduct myself and how I move, maybe it's just because I decided to go for counseling, like to be a school counselor, like to help the youth.
Yeah.
It's like when I think about that, me wanting to help others and assist them in that way. When I think about individuals that may be hurt, um, I never want to take it personally, especially when you're thinking about like the kids and the families and like the different individuals that you could be working with. If you take it from a personal standpoint, you're always essentially going to be offended by somebody, like for what they're saying. You're going to take constructive criticism, not necessarily in a good way, and you taking it personally, it just makes it feel as if like it's a more reflection or it's more of like an attack on you, as opposed to I play a lot of video games and I grew up doing that because of like the people that I had in my life, my brother and my father mainly. And then one thing I definitely learned in that competitive nature is I can blame myself for anything that happens during the match, during the game, whatever it is that happens. So when I take on that responsibility or that level of accountability and like, oh, I could just do this. When you think about a better route that you have in terms of like, oh, I could have did this instead of doing this, or I could have did this instead of doing that, and I make better decisions for next time. That frame of mind that I typically put myself in the context of like say video games or like working out and like blending those two things together, it's that level of ownership. It's that level of responsibility in what it is that you want to do and you trying to get the dedicated or the desired result that you're looking for. So when I think about someone saying a counseling aspect where they may be hurt or they may lash out at me or they may not necessarily say something that I want to hear, I feel like it's a reflection of me. I have to remember that it's not personal. They're clearly dealing with somebody or with something, and I can't take it personally because then it's going to one affect the course of my day, and two, it's going to trickle into affect everybody else that I then overreact or yell at or curse at and things like that. And it's just a trickle down theory, and it doesn't come off in a way that I would want it to for myself. So when I think about how I want to be and how I want to conduct myself around other people, I wouldn't want to treat them the way that I want to be treated. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that people are going to treat me with respect all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean I have to treat you back with respect or you choose to disrespect me. But I would say 90% of the time, like people are pretty cordial and we go about our business. But when I think about someone that's hurt and they go through stuff like that, I don't want to say I want to feel sorry for them because I do, like more of a from an empathetic standpoint. But you just want to not take it personal, because you never know what somebody's going through.
Mm.
It's as simple as that.
It doesn't have to be a little more kind in this world.
Yeah, people can be more kind. And then you picked up your phone before in the sense of like social media, and me and my friends were just talking about that the other day when you think about like the concept of dating and social media and expectations, and then that comes a level of accountability, a level of entitlement, a level of what people genuinely believe that they deserve, you know. And as much as people hate to hear this, nobody deserves anything. You don't deserve shit. You gotta own, yeah, like anything that you want to own in life, you obviously have to accomplish and you work towards on your own or with your whoever it is that you're working towards to get to whatever it is that you want. But you're not necessarily entitled to have anything. You don't deserve to have a nice BMW or whatever car you're going to drive outside. You don't deserve to have a nice house. You don't deserve to have anything.
No, there's so much entitlement in today's world where people don't necessarily even understand the true concept of what hard work is really supposed to develop in someone.
No.
When you're just handed everything over time, it just creates this lack of urgency and lack of goal setting and lack of goal achieving. And you're sitting there wondering, like, how can I actually make myself a little more happier? Well, me personally, and what I've seen through also helping my clients is that when we set goals and we achieve goals, the amount of serotonin that leaks into the brain, so the brain leaks out serotonin a little bit more when you actually are setting those goals and you're achieving them. You really are putting in that extra little bit of work because you know damn well it's like I didn't cheat myself to get over here. Actually put in a little bit more of the extra work. But then say if someone is again all too often in the industry, I say when people get that surgery, they lose their weight like that, they come back a whole different person, but then they don't change anything about their lifestyle.
Yeah.
They'll change the way they work out. They'll change the way they eat. They'll change the way they lift, and they completely bounce back to how they used to be
Yeah.
and regain all that weight back. And that's a, another sign of just their own character. I want to say not only just diminishing, but the lack of real awareness towards the body and towards your self if you're not setting yourself the proper goals and development.
Yeah, like you skip that development phase. Like you essentially, I don't want to say cheating, but I guess cheating, in having like a surgery like that, or having like say like a level of entitlement that people think that they can just have everything. Like the job that I would be working before, I worked in with educational partnerships, working with different universities, with my company in Summer Discovery over in Roslyn, or like UCLA, University of Michigan, CU Boulder, Georgetown, like all that stuff. That's why every summer you don't see me.
Yeah.
And that's at some college campus. I work with a lot of affluent kids all the time. And the perspective that a lot of my counselors have, they look at these kids and like, oh, they're so entitled, they're so snot nosed, they're so annoying. And it's like, that's all that kid knows. Like they grew up with money, they grew up with the things that many Americans like, or foreigners, because a lot of my students are international, they don't get to have. They don't have to have the sense of, I can just buy whatever I want when I walk into a store. I can buy everybody food and drinks, and like I'm just putting on my dad's credit card and everything's just like fine. For them, they're not thinking about it from a level of like, I'm trying to be arrogant, I'm trying to be like mean and cruel. Some kids are, not all kids. But I can't blame that student for the situation that they grew up in. The same way that I can't blame someone else for the situation of like, even in a negative context of like what may or may not have happened to them. Whatever it is that they're going through in their life, whether they grew up a certain way and they have money, or they grew up and they didn't have any money, and how they come together in terms of how you choose to treat other people. I think that's the important part. Because those same kids that have money versus this other kids that don't doesn't necessarily mean that this group is going to be like more arrogant or more, angry towards other people in terms of like them not having as much money or not having a sense of freedom that students or people that don't have enough money or don't have that sense of freedom and autonomy because they have to do all these other things to essentially get the things that they want in terms of like working towards whatever it is that you want in life. I can't get mad at those students for having. I also can't get mad at the students for not having, because it's just two completely different lives. They didn't ask to be there. The same way that someone who's broke doesn't ask to be there either, because it's those kids, I think, at the end of the day. But you make a good point from a physicality, like working out standpoint, when it comes to like cheating yourself. Like yes, you can have a surgery, and especially now with like going back to the phone thing, with social media and everyone being able to essentially have whatever it is that you want with the change of like you just having a surgery. And if you have the money, then you can like do it. Yes, it may change how you look physically, but it is not going to change mentally what you had to do to get to that point. So when you see someone who like, I guess I'll call that a relapse, goes back to their old ways.
Yeah, no, that'd be considered a relapse. Yeah, I would consider that a relapse.
Whether it's vices or whether it's, like just like their old habits and things that they have, and they essentially gain all the way back, they have to be the ones that have to deal with that. They have to be the individual, be like, oh, like I didn't put these proper things in place to make sure that like I'm eating the right foods, I'm training all the time, I'm doing what I need to consistently do, as opposed to like I can just eat the same shit that I'm eating before, have the same drink, go out to the same places, do the same things, but now I look like this. And now I'm like, say, peak whatever it is that I want to look like. And then there's no level of discipline, there's no level of sacrifice, there's no level of the mental fortitude that you have to build and grow, and it breaks and then it builds again, and then you break it again, and then and then all that over time, which is like everything that Jocko talks about. When I think about that, someone that essentially cheats through it, and this is no offense to them, but I mean, if you have the money to do it, go ahead. I don't, so I'm not going to do that anyway, regardless, even if I did have the money to do. But there's a different level of appreciation that you have when you take the time in and you put the time in towards whatever it is that you want to do. So I feel like that's very difficult to beat. Like when you're like there with yourself, those long hours, or those late nights, or those early mornings, or whatever it is, because you see me when I'm dragging in, and I see you when you come in, you're just like, I'm here again.
Here we go, crack it open the can. Yeah. Here we go, crack open the can of excess. You're getting ready to chug it down.
Yeah, and you're just getting ready to, do whatever it is that that you intended to do. It's easy when you have goals, because it makes it that much more fulfilling and rewarding when you're working towards them. But if you have a surgery and you just, you own a knife, and it's a scary situation.
Just change your habits. It's not necessarily the hardest thing to do over time. Is it hard initially for the first 2 weeks to a month? Absolutely, because you're changing a whole rhythm, you're changing a whole routine. But if you're able to go under anesthesia and you're able to go under a knife, and you're able to, do all these extra things for your body aside from doing the easier thing. I'm not saying for everybody. I know that there's also a good portion of people out there that desperately actually do need the surgery, which
Yeah.
again, you're a totally different conversation. Or a totally different topic for a different day. That's something that it's a couple clients who I'm currently having them lose as much weight as they can for the surgery in itself. But um, the biggest thing when it comes down to that weight loss in itself, coming from someone myself where I lost over 100 pounds and then I had to regain 25 pounds.
Mm.
It was one of the hardest things to do, but it also didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Like it happened over a steady period of time. Like the dramatic amount of weight that was lost from 289 to 225 happened within 6 months.
Mm.
The rest of that just happened over time, just by chiseling down and really maintaining, and also not necessarily staying the most committed to the results, but also, sometimes when I was still drinking, then I would go out on the weekend and go on a binge. Then a week goes by, I didn't hit the gym, all that stuff, and then rebound back up, back down, back up, back down. But over the course of a year and a half, about a year and a half, 2 years, it was 104-pound weight loss, and then I had to gain back 20 pounds. Excuse me, because I felt weak. I felt sick, and my body just didn't feel right. So then I went back up to 205, and I've been here ever since. It's just a matter of like my fluctuation. It goes down now to like 198, 196. Then I'm back up to 205 again. And my goal is now to just kind of get like that 210 area and just maintain a solid muscle mass around my body.
Mm.
Like the hardest part of that whole weight loss in itself was within the first month and a half of just really focusing on getting to the gym, eating right, and also putting down alcohol.
Mm.
Because alcohol is such a fat retainer, especially if you're someone who like is a mixer, and if you're somebody who has like a lot of um soda with their drinks, or high, sugar, high sugar syrups in
Yeah.
with your drinks as well. You're not only just, your body has to break down that alcohol, but it also now has to break down all that sugar too, which also will then increase that hangover strength the next day.
Yeah.
Worst hangover I ever got was after the Ranger game, and I had mixed so many different types of alcohol and liquors, and I woke up the next day crawling back and forth because I couldn't even just sip water. I would like a cap full, and then you take a sip. I would lay down 2 seconds, got to throw it back up again because of how much my body was sick from the inside.
Yeah.
And especially after you lose weight. When you lose a lot of weight, you can't drink like the way you used to back when you were a bigger guy.
Yeah.
When I was 289 pounds, I was able to pound down an 8 pack and still be perfectly fine for the rest of the night. I could go up to about 12 and then without feeling like a real, like, drunk buzz.
Yeah.
Talk to me skinny. I had maybe 2 beers and I was already faded.
Mm.
It's a whole different also relationship you gotta develop with your body when you go through such dramatic weight changes. And in regard to weight gain or weight loss, it's when you are a bigger person, yeah, you may be able to drink a little bit more, but then now that you're skinnier, and you gotta be careful, you cannot drink as much as you used to because your body can't even process it nearly as much as it used to.
Mm.
For some people it doesn't change, but for majority of people, and I'll even argue it for, say, like I'll say like 75%, or maybe up to 80% of people that I've worked with, when it comes down to their alcohol intake, it's always dropped dramatically once they lost their weight.
Mm.
Because their body can't necessarily, process it the same way, because their body is a lot more healthier.
Yeah.
And they're also, the metabolism isn't as built up, or they're, I forgot the proper terminology behind it because I'm not a full doctor, but
Mm.
I just noticed that when my clients stop drinking the alcohol, that that basically your body is able to metabolize not only just food better, and your gut health, and your enzymes in the body, and the enzymes in your metabolism are able to break down nutrients better and send off the actual nutrients to your body, versus just letting it sit there over time. And
Mm.
the liquor shits,
Mm.
the horrible liquor shits.
This doesn't sound good.
No, it's
Yeah.
so the number one thing I don't know how we got back to this, rambling with this shit, but alcohol. What is your in? I would say, fuck, what's I'm trying to put together you can see firsthand, there's no script here.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
It's all just off the dome, but I'm trying to think of the proper terminology I'm trying to use behind it. But you're view on alcohol and what it necessarily does not to the body, but going into the field that you're going into, uh, it also destroys a lot of families too.
Mm,
Unfortunately, there's that scenario in the gym where there's a good portion of the people in there don't understand what they're really putting into their body is that poison.
yeah.
Are you do you find that it's easier to build up an alcohol addiction in a household where there's always alcohol, no matter what, as far as like some people, like some families I know have the ability to have the alcohol in the house,
Yeah.
but not drink every night, just
Mm.
maybe like on a weekend or two. All right, guys. So real quick, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Welshcare store, and this will be the final commercial for today. So this will be a combination of not only the stuff that you can get for your vitamins and for supplement wise, but you can also get a wide variety of products for not only your home, self-care, beauty, everything and above. So if you are looking for a one-stop shop, by all means, go down and click on the Welshcare link. Now let's get back to the episode. But then develop some type of a alcoholic issue over time. Do you find that it's more possible if they can keep alcohol in the house without the risk of going back to it, or do you find that there's someone that just completely like clear it out?
Mm, that's a good question. I think it's I think of it being layered. Like there's a lot of factors that come into play here because you have to think about the child and like their family's history and like what the child essentially is susceptible to. And then you also have to think about in terms of like the biggest thing that I say for anything, whether the kid is addicted to their phone, whether they're addicted to social media, whether they're addicted to hard drugs or soft drugs in the sense of like say weed and things like that,
Mhm.
or they're addicted to alcohol or even just popping pills and all that kind of other stuff. It comes down to parenting. It comes down to the precedent that that family then sets in terms of like enforcing the rules and stuff that they have on the child. It's difficult when you think about like how someone is raised, and then that's something that's been big for me because I wasn't raised. I feel like most people were. I come from a Caribbean household, so like my level of I think like the discipline that I had to have, regardless of my father not necessarily being in my house anymore, there was still a foothold in the sense of like if I did anything, like I fucked around in school or I did anything I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing, I'd still be scared of him being 2.5 hours away from me to come all the way down here and like kick me in my teeth. So there's a level of fear that I think a kid needs to have for the parent. And obviously, this is not a very counseling-esque answer because people would not necessarily agree with me, but it comes from a level of like,
I mean, in a sense, I also agree too, just
yeah,
because when I see firsthand when there's the kid has no fear in the parent whatsoever, and the kind of abuse the parent goes through and
you
screaming
like
and
walk
cursing
all
and
over
hitting.
them. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like not scared straight, but it's like all those terrible TV shows that you see on like TLC, and the kid just
Hmm.
like you said, they walk all over the parent, they can ask them for whatever they want, and by ask I mean demand,
Yeah.
whatever it is that they want.
Just take whatever they want.
Yeah, and then the kid has no sense of respect for their own parent, let alone any authority or adult figures that they meet in public.
And then when they meet that authority figure, then the parent has to say, "Hey, I don't like the way you talk to my kid now."
Yeah, and it's like,
Versus when we were growing up, it was, "What did you say to them?"
yeah, like what did you say to my son or what did you say to my daughter and so forth.
No, it was, yeah, and it's like, "What did you?" And then they say what the teacher would say when he's saying, looking down, "What did you say to her?"
Yeah,
Instead,
exactly. Yeah,
and you get the backhand instead.
yeah.
Now,
Instead of yeah,
now the teacher is getting the whole backhand, and that's another part where I'm starting to see where it's back to what you said before, their parenting, that their house, like the households.
hmm.
We come from a neighborhood and where there's a lot of broken families.
Hmm.
There's a lot of broken households. And there's a lot of unfortunate scenarios where some families had some families a little too early.
Yep.
And then some men necessarily weren't ready to be men into their kids' lives in general,
Yep.
which is not going to cause another layer of trauma and then another broken, an endless cycle
Of broken family.
of broken families.
Hmm.
The it breaks my heart because Brentwood in itself is one of the most, I want to say, accepting and diverse places on Long Island in general.
Yeah,
Accepted, diversely accepted, whatever the,
that's right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right English, right?
yeah. It's the right English in the sense of like it's a very diverse. It's a very you might have been thinking inclusive.
Yeah,
Yeah, inclusive places, very equitable as well for a family. Depending on regardless of what the situation is, not depending, regardless of what the situation is. To answer your question about specific alcohol, then I'll get to that.
yeah.
When I'm thinking about the sense of alcohol, And like if it is in a home, and if like will they make a child susceptible to it? I do personally think that it would. I think there has to be a level of like when that child gets older, like maybe when they're in their teenage years, and if not to say that they necessarily have to see something happen to somebody else for them to know that they don't necessarily want that for themselves. That was my best way of learning because my brother's older. So like whatever I saw happen to him, I didn't want to happen to me. I've been beat, I think, by my parents one time in my life. But me seeing it happen to my brother because he'd just be doing stupid shit and all that kind of stuff, I was essentially the complete opposite person from them. Like very straight A's scholar, honor roll student. Like I was like trying to not get a very straight edge, not doing any drugs, not doing anything. I don't think I had alcohol until I was honestly like probably 20, 21 years old, like just before my 21st birthday. Like I was just not trying to do any of that. And even from the roommates and things that I had and the stuff that I've seen in college, especially being an RA, like people don't know how to drink properly. And the one thing that my father did teach me when I was younger is like when you have liquor, like make sure you drink the same liquor the entire night. Like if you have rum, you're just drinking rum. If you're drinking vodka, you're just drinking that. If you're drinking tequila, it's just that. Not necessarily mixing things and all these juices and all this other stuff. Then you throw in some random ass Red Bull because you want to shotgun things. It just makes it a whole shit show.
He's a literal shit show especially the next day.
For everybody. And it's not something that I knew I wanted for me. And it taught me how to drink casually in social settings, maybe for one to loosen up more and stuff like that. But then you also have to learn how to talk to people without the sense of alcohol. So I guess in the sense of like that question of you saying, you know, if that's something I am worried about, like for children, I am, because everyone doesn't necessarily have, I don't want to say the correct coping skills, but the most appropriate coping skills in terms of dealing with their problems. People may not necessarily want to speak with other individuals. They may not necessarily want to go to counseling. They may not want to sit and meditate. They may not want to go look for things online that they can find to do something with themselves in terms of how can I solve so-and-so. They may just like, they may ask their friends about something that they may be going through or something that they're going through themselves and like, how would you deal with it? It's like going on Reddit and asking a question and putting Reddit at the end, and then you try to find an answer, which is the most terrible place to get advice from. You can get normal questions where, where can I find such and such? And then like you just want to get a different answer from what you think you might get online. But right at the end, boom. Anywho. But in the context of like alcohol or drugs or anything that can like truly damage a person or damage their family or the people that they have around them that they care about, you know, it would probably be best if it wasn't in their household. But if it was in their household, at least put it in an area where obviously the kid's not going to be able to get to it. And if it is an area where the kid can get to it, make sure that that child understands the repercussions of them even touching it or even like remotely like being in that general vicinity of like, do I have to ask you whether or not you had something from this cabinet, like this liquor cabinet? Because my father at his house, he has like this big giant globe. He has like all this alcohol that's there. And he used to have a drinking problem way back when because he's retired. He's a Marine. My whole family's Marines. And when I think about the stuff that he went through, whether it was PTSD or the trauma and stuff that he's seen in his life, you know, which may or may not have had an impact in terms of like obviously like how my parents were together and how they then eventually split. Alcohol was a big vice for him. You know, I may have saw when I was younger what that may have did to him in the sense of like how he overreacted things like towards other people and how angry he would get.
Yeah.
You know? And that made me think maybe subconsciously to myself when I was, 10, 11 years old or however old I was at the time, that, maybe I shouldn't like do that stuff. Like I think there's a level of it coming from the parents. And then there's a level of it where your environment is involved in terms of like where that child is growing up. But then there's also a level at the end of the day where it comes down to the accountability of that person. Not saying that every kid is going to obviously have the, mental fortitude or the development because they're still developing during that time to actually know the difference between, like maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I shouldn't do that because their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed yet, or in their executive functioning is terrible and they can't really make concrete decisions that will in some cases completely change the trajectory of like where their life goes from if they start alcohol early or taking drugs or they're just smoking weed all the time and things like that. But there's so much that's going on in the world that I think it makes kids nowadays, I think, more susceptible to doing those things because it's difficult for them to deal with the pain that they see. And then everything's really just tying back to like you taking up your phone and saying social media, when I think about kids comparing themselves to others, or like even the girls that I speak to, like that are my students, and they talk about, like I want to look like her and this Kardashian, and I want to have a body like this, and it's like as much as I want to do that, to the kid, I can't, because I have to be like, well, I'm the adult in the room, and I can't let that kid see. Not necessarily they can't see my emotions because kids are able to pick up on those things. They can tell whether or not you're really empathetic or or you're not empathetic towards them. But it's if you react a certain way, especially specifically for school counseling, to what a child, whether they're middle school, elementary school, and I'm working with middle schoolers for this placement that I have in Half Hollow Hills, or high schoolers, it makes them more responsive to not necessarily taking how you reacted to what they
Mhm.
had to say in the greatest light, because they may get more fearful or they may be more weary or susceptible, and that's just the word of the day, susceptible, um, to their own inner emotions of like, oh, like that is maybe that's weird, or it's like, oh, like he does think I'm like dumb, or it's like, oh, like he thinks I'm just like some silly like snot nosed Gen Zer, and he's like comparing me to me comparing myself to wanting to be a Kardashian or a Jenner or anything else that they see on their phones. I can't get upset at those kids for wanting that, because if it's something that you constantly see and it's something that's taken away from their phone and it's put in like social media, or it's put in the internet, or it's put, just on any kind of device, or even just like spoken about in the spoken word towards people, kids are going to pick up on it. They pick up on culture. They pick up on culture shifts. And they pick up on what's popping and what's not popping, and like what's interesting, what's fashion and what's not fashion. And sometimes it's being, a Kardashian or the super crazy, like super thin Vogue, whatever model and stuff like that. And as much as body dysmorphia is a thing for young girls, it's the same thing for guys. The same high school students that I've had, not last year, earlier this year, my high school placement, those kids, they see me and they're just like, oh, like, like, what's your cycle like? And I look at them and I'm like, I can't overreact to a kid being like, the fuck did you just ask me if I'm on a cycle? But he isn't know that. He
Yeah,
just looks at TikTok and he sees guys that are like his age or half his age or maybe twice his age, and they're
on a
like, oh, they're
cycle.
on trend and they're on clenbuterol and anything else. There's a lot of guys that I've seen from our gym that tell me about the stuff that they're on. And I don't know if it's like I give off like a counselor vibe, because I don't tell people I'm a school counselor. They ask me what I do. I'm like, oh, I'm in education.
You
You
just
know,
naturally have that aura because you also
yeah,
look people in your eyes when you're talking. You're also like,
yeah,
you're very just like,
yeah. And I'm listening. Like
yeah,
I'm
you're
like
listening
really
with intent
tuned
to
in.
understand.
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm listening with an intent to understand. I'm not listening with an intent to, because if I'm
I love that one so
if
much.
I'm listening with an intent to respond, then that means that I'm not listening to you. I just want you to stop talking. And I
Hmm.
want you to stop talking. I'm gonna fuck with you. But that's terrible when you're speaking to kids, because when you're speaking to kids and she's just like, oh, I want to look like a Kardashian. I'm like, why the fuck would you want to do that? One, you don't curse at children. Two, you don't ask them like a reprimanding question where it's like it comes off in a very negative context. If
Hmm.
I'm coming at a kid, regardless of what my bias is or like how I feel about certain things, I have to leave all that outside. When I step into a school or I step into any establishment, and people really should do this in life in general, but I'm just taking this in the context of just school. You put your biases and you put your preconceived notions aside, and you really look at someone for who they are as a person and whatever it is that they need to tell you. They are really intentionally more susceptible to actually wanting to speak with you and tell you things that they may or may not normally tell people, because they genuinely feel like you care.
Hmm.
And if you get someone to feel comfortable and you get them to feel like you care, whether you do or you don't, because that's the part that's manipulating and it's kind of sad about some aspects of like counseling in general, not necessarily school counseling, but counseling as a whole. Um, you really can get people to tell you the deepest, darkest things that they may not necessarily want to say to people. But you being confided, you being their counselor, you being an authority figure or administrator or anything within a school, it gets kids to actually want to speak up and say things. Because when they don't, then you have things where it's like it's not just alcohol and hard drugs and things like that. Then you step into the other area with suicide,
Hmm.
and then you have kids that are more susceptible to actually having suicidal ideations, and they do want to take their own lives, or they talk about it willingly and they make jokes, and it's not necessary. And that's when the demeanor changes. And then it's like, okay, like this is serious. Like then I have to kind of cut you off halfway when we're speaking. I'm like, why would you?
Why'd you make
Yeah,
that
I'm like,
joke?
why did you make that comment? Because now I'm fearful of like what you're intending to do for yourself. I'm not um afraid of what you're gonna do to me.
Yeah.
Kids, I'm not worried about that. I'm more concerned about what that kid intends to do to themselves, because if you are a danger to yourself, then now that level of confidentiality has to be broken, which then stinks, because especially when you build that therapeutic relationship, because that's the term that we use in counseling with kids, it's unfortunate because you build it up, but then when something like that happens and you have to break that trust with the child, they may not want to speak to you later on. So when I think about this generation, and like, you talk about alcohol and you talk about, drugs and like what they're susceptible to, and it's because they're impressionable. They're impressionable to what they see. They're impressionable to what they like. They're impressionable to what their friends like and what their friends think is cool because they want to fit in and they want to be cool and they want all of that. So middle school has been so interesting because like you just see all of that happening at the same time. And it's just because the hormones are just firing off in 15 different directions and they don't know what to do with themselves because we were there before. And I can't say I
Yeah.
wasn't because that's exactly how I was when I was their age.
Don't miss it. I
Yeah.
don't miss it whatsoever. I
But
don't.
they have to grow. They have to get to a point where they're like, oh, you know what? Like, that makes sense. Like, I will choose to or choose not to do XYZ thing, whether it's a benefit to me or whether I think it's cool. I think after the age of, let's say, I don't want to say 21. I'm going to say like 22, 23. So like the time after which, whether you chose to go to college and you finished your 4-year degree, cool. Whether the time that you didn't go to college, you went straight into the working force, but you were in the working force long enough and you're away from that separation of being in high school long enough that you're able to understand executive functioning, you make your own decisions, and you understand autonomy, and you're able to be held accountable for things. That's when I will then treat you like, not treat you, but look at you like you're an actual adult. Not that you're 18 years old and you can go sign up for $70,000 and like risk your life away for freaking student loan debt. Like, not that age. 20 was like, all right, like you can drink now. I really think like 22, 23, maybe 24 in some senses of people where they should have a really good understanding of not necessarily just themselves, but like the difference between right and wrong. Some people take the whole rest of their life to understand who they are. And some people take the whole rest of their life or even long years to understand. And by long years, I mean like say like 5, 10, 15, like in increments of 5 years in terms of what they want to do with themselves in a sense of like a career or the kind of person they want to be or the kind of people that they want to date or the kind of people that they want to be around in terms of having friends. You have to go through life experiences to see whatever it is that you want.
Right.
You can't just think that, well, not that you can't think, but you really can't think about what it is that you want. But I think it's more important to experience what it is that you might be looking for. If you don't have a level of experience when it comes to it, it's very difficult to tell somebody about something. And like say in the sense of like the point that you made when you're talking about like relationships and the guy gets his heart broken and he goes to the club and he's just there like just trying to have sex with girls or guys or whatever it is that he's interested in. And just for the sake of numbing the pain that he's not internally dealing with himself. If you take a situation like that, it's hard to tell someone, say like an example, even though it's like far-fetched, a virgin, like you shouldn't do XYZ thing when it comes to like having numerous sex with copious amounts of people. Virgin's gonna look at you like, well, I just like want to know what it feels like. Like, who would you be the person to tell? Like, who are you telling me? Like, this isn't a great thing for me. It's like, I just want to fucking do it. Literally want to fucking do it. But at the same time, for that person, you have to be able to meet that person where they're at in the sense of what they have going on in their lives, what their situation is, and if it makes sense for you to actually say it to something. In the sense of counseling, you can't always assume that everybody knows everything, especially when it comes to kids, or what their perceived experience is, or what their actual reality is in the environment that they live in. Like I'm over at Dix Hills. If I'm over at Dix Hills, people think Dix Hills. What's the first thing you think of when you think about Dix Hills?
I think a little bit more on the richier side and some broken kids who don't know really or who don't who don't understand hard work.
No, yeah, you said kids who may not understand hard work, ritzy, I'm gonna say more affluent side. Any demographic in terms of like the kind of person, like skin, ethnicity, like what their race
Well,
is.
I actually know it's like Dick House is like semi cordial when it comes down to I want to say it's a fairly white skinned, fairly white skinned, but I also know they're also a little bit more on this side of what's the word I'm looking for? Multicultural.
So like other like different kinds of races. Like would you say like maybe like Asian or like Indian families that live there? Or would you see like more Caucasian families probably live there?
I would say a little bit more on the Caucasian side.
So, yeah. So like take that example of like, which is fine. It's a good example of Dix Hills. If I were to tell you that I met with a student last week that is living in a homeless shelter, would you believe me?
No, well, I wouldn't say to the fullest extent, but also knowing where we're at with today's market and everything else that's going on in today's world, I also can understand that just because it's It's literally what some of the hardest it's ever been for people and families in general right now to even just stay afloat or even just to maintain any type of bills in general.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like my family had to unretire in order for them to really, maintain bills and everything else and
Yeah.
food on the table. So I can't believe it, but I also can believe it at the same time, just because of how hard the times are, and it's not just affecting just one area;
Mm.
it's affecting the whole nation, if not the whole world right now, too.
Yeah. So in that sense, and that's a great answer, and thank you for that. In that sense, there definitely are kids that are very affluent where I'm leaving the school and there's G Wagons and Maseratis, and just for the people even watching, Maseratis are not very expensive cars.
No, they're not at
You
all.
can go find a Ghibli for like 24 grand and act like you're stunning, and you're gonna be broken like a year because the car is terrible on maintenance, it's terrible on gas,
Every
especially,
piece is
and
expensive.
every piece is expensive, and it's a shit luxury car.
Horrible oil
Yeah,
change.
yeah, it's not good. But that's side note of the day. But yes, I do have students that are very affluent and they come from money. But I also do have students that come from a lot of hardship. And some students may come from the inner city and their family may go through hoops and ladders, whether like maybe a family like yourself, where they unretired to continue to work so they could put their kids through school, or maybe they just had kids, like you mentioned earlier, where they had kids too early. But at the same time, they also don't want their kids to be in an area where they may not necessarily get a good education. So they move them to an area where the education essentially is better. And I'm just using quotes because it's better in some senses, because what we have in Brentwood, it's good in the sense of you learning a lot of street smarts, you having a lot of diversity, and you actually learning how to interact with people on a day-to-day basis. Where if you say you take like a Dix Hills, and not in most cases, but say a Dix Hills or like a Roslyn, or majority of towns that are like say in Nassau County, even though Dix Hills is not Nassau County. You get kids that may not necessarily know how to interact with other people that don't look like them. Like the company that I used to work for, because I'm finishing up my master's, so I'm like, let me just screw this whole work thing right now. I work with a lot of really affluent kids, whether they're overseas or whether they're here, predominantly here in New York. And I may deal with students who come from these very high profile, high ranking families when it comes to society. So them having a director that doesn't look like them, is African American, isn't everything that they thought was like this program is supposed to be, or they may be working with other students that don't look like them. They come from the inner city of Chicago, or they come from Morocco, or they come from Egypt, or they come from South Korea. They're just like, why is every kid not white? Why is every kid not like, I can't just have like my Rolex and every other kids don't have like big, nice, fancy thing. Like it's a sense of entitlement for them, but it's also a sense of them thinking that they're better than everybody else. But even that goes back to what I said earlier. I can't get mad at that kid because that's all that kid knows. I'm more mad at your parents because the parents are shit parents for not treating you, well, not necessarily treating you, but raising you in a sense that not everybody in life is going to have what you have, especially at your age. So there needs to be a level of what you have isn't common, so you can't look your nose down at other people if they don't have the things that you have in life, even if they want to have those things, but it doesn't mean that you can't treat those people with respect. That's for the essence of like those kids being affluent. But when I think about the kids that may come from a lower socioeconomic status and they live in Dix Hills, those kids have the same kind of issues. It's just on that person. Their parents may not be home because they're working two jobs. They may be like 14, 15 years old, but they have to raise all their siblings because their parents aren't home. They may have to make sure that there's food and stuff on the table, and they have to get their working papers right when they turn 16 so they can start going to work, or they work illegally, like getting under the under the table money, doing odd jobs and stuff that they don't normally want to do because they have no other choice. You make it work for the sake of making it work, regardless of what your situation is. You just do that for the sake of, I want my family to be okay, so I do it. So working with kids like that, and they're in Dix Hills, I commend those kids. Not that I don't commend the kids that are affluent because they have the whole other list of issues, which are not necessarily always different than what the student from a lower socioeconomic status is coming from, but I can't fault either of them because of the situation that they're doing. Because every situation is different, and they didn't ask for it. They were just brought into this world. So you saying earlier, and I think that's the point I want to get on, where it's like people having children too early, who are coming into a point now in the tail end of our generation, because we're the last generation for millennials, at least the last year for millennials.
Right.
It's difficult to buy a home and settle down and have a family. It makes it difficult when you have that going on, when you have a housing market crisis. It makes it difficult when that's going on, when you have the crisis of social media, because everyone thinks that they're entitled to have a $20-something million mansion, and I'm supposed to
All the
have
cars in the
all
world.
and I'm supposed to go on vacations with Cardi B and Offset, and I'm supposed to do all this stuff. It makes it difficult when, and that's for both people, whether you're a man or a woman. And I don't want it to come off in a context where it's like us saying that women have all these demands, because there are definitely men that I've met in my life that have the same, just the same amount of demands that
I want to go on this
that I
trip with
wouldn't
all my
want.
boys.
Yeah,
And
and
we're
it's
gonna
like,
rent out this place. And
yeah,
we're
and
gonna
do all
go. We're
this,
gonna
and
pop all these bottles.
yeah, and
We're
I'm
gonna
like,
go
and what money
bitches.
you got? Like, yeah, you want to get a bottle of, like, I don't even know what the name of the bottle is, where it's like it's a white bottle with like the blue, like little speckles,
Bro, and
stuff on
it
it.
has a bell on the top. I forget the name. It's a certain tequila, but like people are willing to pay hundreds of dollars for that in the club when it's just like an easy like $30-$40 liquor at best.
Yeah.
And itself does the same exact thing as the same bottle of Patron that's been going around for years.
And some things that people see now, even like when you take like rappers or entertainers and even like athletes in that sense, like they'll go to clubs, not all of them, some of them for these stupid TikTok videos, and they'll buy liquor for the sake of like just buying an expensive bottle of liquor and just pouring it out, just to let you know that like I got money that I can spend and you don't. But like, me and my crew, we got it. And it's like, well, one, that's a waste of liquor because I don't want my liquor going around. At least I want to drink it. Two, that's flexing for who? For
Yeah.
the other guy across the club, and it's like he's over here with his crew, and I got my crew with the girls that we all paid for because they're paid to be here because we're at a strip club or whatever your form of entertainment is. It's it's that level of when young men see stuff like that and they think that like that's what is cool and like that's what's supposed to be going on and like that's what's here. That's a normal.
It builds an unattainable ego.
Yeah, and that's what's normal now in society. When you look at that, that's no different than how women see, for the sense of like, oh, like what the Kardashians have, or like any celebrity in that sense. There's a level of people even not necessarily wanting to be in relationships anymore. When you take in the context of like just hookup culture or just like casually dating, and it's not even casually dating anymore. Now it's called fucking situationships or some bullshit like that. You have that. It's not even called a fling. It's like you have a situationship, and then you have your roster, whether
The
you have a
roster.
roster of
Oh my
women
God,
or
the
you're a girl and you have a
roster.
roster of dudes. It's just everyone has too many options. That's what I think, me
Yeah.
personally.
No,
I think
but
everyone
that's
has
a
too many options.
great fucking point
Everyone has
because
too many options.
it is a great point because the phones just made it too easy for everyone to have options, and people wonder why like people aren't getting as married or marriages aren't lasting as long as they used to, because it's showing too many options that are out there for you. But meanwhile, like, if you look back like 30-40 years ago, there really wasn't social media. There wasn't social media period whatsoever. There wasn't even smartphones. You got your news, you had your TV, you had families, and then you had basically that was your way of knowing what was quote, trending, and all these other things around there. What's going on with TV, what's going on with the radio, and you actually interacted with people in person. You had a conversation, you had real time talks with people. Now I can talk to literally whoever the hell I want to on these phones. It doesn't matter where they're at in the world. It doesn't matter what time it is. And literally, it could be I can talk to this person. If then this person shows me a little bit more of that slight of interest, I'm gonna give my attention to this person. Meanwhile, this person over here really thought we were developing something over here, and then this person. It's an endless cycle of just nonstop, feeding into not only just egos, but feeding into these I want to say these temptations that your body is giving you, and you're allowed to see all these options, so you can actually cave a lot. All right, guys. So real quick, we're just going to talk a little bit more about the boys over at Jocko Fuel, aka Origin Main. Me personally, I'm a big user of their creatine, the hydration, and the protein powder. Personally, it's my favorite protein on the market, with a combination of using digestive enzymes, essential amino acids, probiotics, and the quality of 4 different blends of protein that are time release blends. I personally think it is the best protein on the market. If you are wanting to support the channel in any way, use code Welsh10 for 10% off your order. Again, it is Welsh10 for 10% off your order. And I guarantee you can go down and check out the sample pack. It's $11.99 right now. You get your sample pack, try out these flavors, see which one you like, and I guarantee you there's going to be one that you do. Let's get back to the episode. Faster into these temptations. It's more of just like that dangling Twinkie that's hanging a little bit closer that you're able to attack, because you can actually you realize that you have control over it now.
Yeah.
Meaning that you have control over how many people you can talk to over the internet and how many people talk back to you. And it's a shame It really is, because it's also now just an endless cycle of someone ending this and then they go back to that person because that person was giving them more of the comfort, and as soon as they get too comfortable again, and then they go venture off and start talking to somebody else again. It's an easy way. It's an easy gateway for people to just continuously never satisfy their own emptiness or happiness at the end of the day too. It's another reason why I'm so big on being content and happy with yourself first before anything else, before you even get involved with another situationship or anything else, because you want to be more content with who you are before you really put yourself out there again, and then not allowing yourself to give into these temptations and actually being different from this generation of people who are continuously letting these people who really don't even care about them feed their egos, their likes, their comments, and all these other things. Meanwhile, there's people out there who have genuine care, and they don't want to give the people who have genuine care the time of day, but they rather give the people who are giving them that little bit of attention for the time being, because they somewhat have a mini eye-catching appeal about them. It's diminishing to the idea that this generation can maintain a stable relationship for the long run. In the gym in the morning, how many marriages do we? How many couples come in together in the morning that we see? Older couples. I'm talking like.
I know there's only have like one. There's only one that I can think of. I think she's a lighter skinned Puerto Rican woman, and her husband, I believe, is also Spanish, but he's more like he's like slightly lighter than me. I think he's a nurse, and then I forget what she does. But they come in together sometimes. I don't know. I can't remember their names right now. They come in, and I think that's really it. There really isn't anyone else that I know that's like, say, like late 30s, mid 40s, like comes in together as a couple. It's typical, like it's
60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and
those.
they're divorced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people in their 30s and 40s, and the amount of people who are divorced now, it's also turning too many people away from the idea of marriage in general, just because people want to be tied down and lose everything, especially guys when they become more successful, don't sign a prenup, and all the work that they did develop something, and then it's all taken away because they're getting divorced. But it's the reason behind the divorces, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation for all that stuff. But it's a little fearful for even just like myself to see what this next generation behind us is going to become, with us being the representation of what it is going to be versus what we had really as a representation growing up. Like, we were able to see a little bit more. Like, we were on that generation that where it was really right before smartphones, where we were a little bit more like, aware of what we were doing as kids. Like, we right before the internet big boom, basically, like AIM, MySpace, and everything else behind all of that. The and seeing what an actual healthy relationships are. Now we're going into another generation of kids where they are not even know. They don't know what a. They're not going to know what a more stable household is either, and it's just another endless cycle of continuously breaking down households that are never ending, filling with trauma. Completely went on another rant there.
No, you're good. I mean, you make a lot of points that, and I want to touch on all of them. It's when you think about divorce and you think about relationships, you think about situationships, you think about flings and all that stuff, and especially like what Gen Z, because after us, has to see, and I don't even know what the generation after Gen Z is because I haven't gotten that far yet. But when I think about all that, my motto is it takes two people to tango, and it's in all the points that you bring up, and then I can sit here and look at you right now and like only sit and defend men and act like I'm some fucking red pillar like guru, and I'm gonna be like the Fresh and Fit podcast and be like, oh, women this.
Oh my god! My god! I swear to God, you bring that fucking shit. That is one of the most. There's a difference between being a strong masculine man. There's then just being an outright arrogant piece of shit.
Yeah. Being a piece of shit.
Like there's points where it's like I get it, you're doing it all for the clicks and the views, but at the same time though, oh my god, I really just wanted to fucking smash the orange.
Yeah. No,
Anyway,
I get what you
anyway,
mean. Like in that sense, and the reason I say that is because, and for anyone that even watches this, I don't want them to get my points misconstrued when it comes to the points that I'm making. When it's holding people accountable, it's both people,
Mhm.
it's men and women. It's I can see where men feel as though, oh, like what do I get from a marriage? Like, like she can marry me and like she takes half my shit and then I have nothing and then blah blah blah. And then you have, oh yeah, that happened to me, and then
the same
it's
thing happens to a woman too.
yeah, it's the same thing that can happen to them. It's like maybe, and in their context, like maybe you were the one that was stepping out. You were the one that promised this lifestyle that you couldn't afford and you couldn't obtain, or maybe you had at some point in time, but it's like you're not necessarily being the person that you either told it that you're going to be, you said you're currently, or that you currently were during the time that you got married, and they essentially married into something that isn't what they thought it was supposed to be, or what you said you were supposed to, or you were going to give them, and I can't fault her for that. Like this no different than someone that marries someone and like now that person ends up being abusive towards them. I'm not going to ask you to, and I think some dumb guy came on some podcast and he said they did that. Oh, I'm going to ask you to endure. I'm going to ask you to endure the relationship that you're in while you're being physically abused and assaulted by somebody else. It's like, no, like that's one, that's disgusting. Two, go to the police before like someone ends up doing that themselves.
Yeah.
But when you think about the context, and obviously those are complete polar opposites of things. But when you think about the context of people being in relationships and people being in situationships and them not taking relationships seriously, all of it goes back to social media. It goes back to social media because it's what they consistently see on a daily basis.
Mhm.
What is popular isn't the 30, 40 years of marriage. And those might be like those good feel videos that they throw in there, like every after
Yeah.
10, 20 scrolls that you get, and then like eventually you see some older couple and they're like, oh yeah, the key to happy marriage, I did this and I did that with my partner. And
Oh, that's what I really want right now.
yeah, like that's not, and for me personally, at the ripe age of 27, I haven't come across someone, I want to say recently, haven't come across someone recently that was genuinely serious in the sense of like them wanting to build something. And for me to say that, I'm not saying that in the sense of that's what I am looking for that, but I'm not going to say that in the sense of like every single woman that I come across has to get. One, that's not how life is.
Yeah.
Two, and I like the point that I made earlier, that's not the lesson that is supposed to be taught to you all the time. Everyone is not supposed to teach you that lesson. It's supposed to be like maybe one, two, maybe three people that are supposed to teach you specifically what that looks like and who that is like to that specific person. But when I think about that in the context of serious relationships and people that have situationships and they want to have casual flings and hookups and Tinder and Bumble and all the dating apps and all that bullshit, I can't get mad at someone that doesn't want something that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want is what you want, and that's perfectly fine. If you want something that's casual, that's cool. If you want something that's long term, that's perfectly fine. I can't get mad at that person. What you can't get mad at, or at least frustrated, because you don't ever really get mad at another person, it's them making you feel or presenting themselves in a way of the thing that is that person really wants. Like say like you want something casual, and then when it comes to you, like, oh, I want something casual too, but they don't. They actually really want something serious. So they're going to do something casual with you long enough to make you kind of like mold and get you into a point where you want to do something serious. That's completely different, and that's manipulative in the sense of two people coming together casually that like can opt to do things long term, and then they're doing things casually for so long that they just get comfortable with each other. You're like, actually, you know what? Like, that would be nice. Like, maybe we should just like take this seriously. And then you end up doing it that way. That's a completely different situation from, oh, like I'm gonna say I'm doing something long term, and like this girl wants something long term, but I'm really casual. And like I just want to like fuck her and go about my business. It's like, no, like now you're a piece of shit and now you're arrogant. And that adds to the issue of women not being very untrusting of a man to not necessarily have their best interest for them, because it's even difficult for them to be friends with somebody.
Yeah.
If I think every like 15 seconds, like if I was a woman and if I have to think every 15 seconds that I may meet somebody out in public, because you will meet more people than you would probably ever would imagine, men or women out in public, when you just present yourself to the world.
Especially go to the gym.
Yeah, and especially when you go to the gym and you're taking care of yourself and you look good, where it's who has right intent, who has the best intentions for me, who's actually going to be someone that genuinely wants to be in my life for the sake of getting to know me as a person, as opposed to getting to know what I have physically to offer to somebody else that I'm not trying to offer to you. I'm trying to offer to specifically someone that I genuinely want to be with. So when you think about dating, when you think about courtship, or you think about the whole dating process, or you think about like game and all that other shit that like really comes into all these different variables, it's difficult for kids to, I don't want to necessarily see the thing that's right, because who am I to say that every single person should want to have something that's serious or they should want to have something that's casual? It really just comes down to that person. And that's why I said that age of like 23, 24, where like you can really start to think of like, what is it do I want in life?
Yeah.
And then you also have to think about like, what age are you currently in? If I'm not coming across someone that's serious and I'm 27 years old, and then say the girls that go to our gym are anywhere from 18 all the way to freaking 62 or 89 or whatever the hell else, you know, the girls I may be looking for at my age, they may just not be looking for that. Or I haven't come across that person that specifically wants that thing. 9 times out of 10 in your 20s, it's very difficult to find someone who's serious because you're in your 20s. Not everyone looks at being in their 20s in that way. I can't get mad at them that they don't view it the same way that I do. The way I view my 20s, it's a period for me to build. It's a period for me to get my shit together, to do what I need to do. So my 30s, I'm still continuing to build, but I'm not having to do it in a way where I'm like, I'm coming from nothing. I'm coming from like bullshit. First job I ever had, I was making $10 an hour working in a fucking warehouse. No healthcare, no benefits, no insurance, no nothing. It's just me lifting with my back, which is terrible, every single day for 6-7 days straight, working with Kojo and a couple other guys, and I bought my first car. I was making like $400 a week. It was terrible, but I bought the car was like $800. So I was like, actually no, the car was $1,200. So by the end of the summer, because I worked it in between college, it was like my summer off, and then I went to my junior year of college. I came after college. I was like, oh, actually, you know what? It wasn't too bad. I felt like I was balling. I was. You can tell me anything. You would think a $20 bill was like having like 3 bands like in my bank account. Like I was rich. But when you think about stuff like that, when you think about the kids and like what is going on in the world, what they see as popular, what they see as popping and trendy and all that stuff, it's about what they see. And if someone doesn't see some loving, caring, super faithful relationship, and they just see like popping bottles and money and ass shaking everywhere on every Tuesday like night, not Tuesday, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, any other day where like some shit is going on where they think that this is cool and like this is what my friends are doing and this is like what's going on in the world, they're not gonna want a fucking relationship because that's gonna look boring. That's not gonna look fun,
I gotta be with the same person my entire life.
Yeah, that's gonna be like, oh, like I'm gonna have the same everything all the time. Like, yeah, it's like having my same fucking
in a world full of options.
Yeah, when you have a world full of options and you have things that's going on, I'm not upset at people that feel as though they have all those options. Where that red pill or all that other shit comes into play when those guys are in their 20s and in their 30s, and then you look at, say, specifically for the women for this camp, where they're coming into now their 30s, and then if everyone looks like and they feel like they have options, the thing for both people, what they realize is like, oh hey, like you're getting older. And typically for guys, when you start with they'll tell you're getting older. Now if you did things right, quote unquote, you're supposed to gain value. You're supposed to be making money, you have a better job, you have whatever it is that you're supposed to have. And you're getting to the point that you wanted to be at, which was what you were saying you're in high school, and then made girls always probably went for someone who was older than you. Maybe you didn't have a car, maybe you didn't have a good job, maybe you didn't have whatever it was. There was always some older guy that had all those things that you had. And I think back to Brentwood High School. I think back to the girls that were juniors and seniors that were dating guys that already graduated. And I'm like, never really thought how creepy that was, because that guy's like 19, 20 years old, or maybe 21, and they're coming back hanging out with 17 and 18-year-olds, but that's a different topic for another day. But that's what happened. And that's no different when someone in just different contexts, because like now you're not in school, that's like someone who's 21, 22 coming from me, because I'm 27 and I'm more established, because it just comes with age, it comes with time, it comes with even just like your mental like capacity and like your brain development of who you are as a person and what you're looking for, and like the level of seriousness. A lot of girls nowadays, they may complain about some guy that is their age because they want someone that's actually mature, knows what they want, isn't around here trying to play games all the time, and they're not fucking going around drinking with their friends every single weekend, and they're not trying to be serious about anything. But it's no different than some guy who's, say, he's 27, he's 30 years old, and he may not necessarily want to go for a 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old, where there's like, oh, like they're in college still, they're hanging out with their friends, they're kind of just getting drunk and whatever the fuck they want to do, like they're not like ready to settle down. It's a really weird influx of things that you have going on. You just have to meet people where they're at, and when you meet them where they're at, and if they're not what you want or you're not what they want, you just go your separate ways, and that's it. It's a numbers game.
And to an extent,
numbers.
Yeah, it is a number. Yeah, it comes back to numbers. To an extent, I will say that the next generation of people, the people who are 22, 21, 20 years old, they are a lot more mature than expected. Like when we were like 20, 21,
Like the Gen
22.
Zers you're referring to?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
right now, like the ones who are 20, 21, 22 years old, like they a good portion of them really have an idea of whatever they want to do with their lives, but then also have an idea of what they don't want with their lives.
Mm,
And that's one thing I could say is completely different from when we were like when growing up when we had 20, 21, 22 year olds in our lives.
yeah.
The idea of what they're focusing more on is a little bit more entrepreneurship too, as well. Like you
Mhm,
have a lot more of these younger, like 19, 20, 21, 22 girls, year old girls who are genuinely wanting to build independent wealth for themselves.
mhm,
That's actually some of the most impressive things I've seen genuinely coming from the women, not necessarily what I'm seeing coming from the men though.
mhm.
That's one thing I will say that I'm talking to some of the men who are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. They're still more focused on how to, get with many girls and the stereotypical shit of what happens on a night out and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Very rarely do I come across someone who's that age and also is very ambitious, hungry wise, entrepreneur wise, and also really want to develop more. Is more focused on their future than it really is right now, just to get all the partying and everything out of their system.
Mhm,
Which again, I can't say anything because when I was younger, I was also that same reckless person while still trying to get stuff done at the same exact time.
mhm.
But there's like this new wave of young hungry entrepreneurs who are really looking into the multiple ways of developing different routes of wealth.
Mhm.
Now, is that a majority of them? No. There's a very rare select few now,
Yeah.
but they're starting to basically, I want to say, become a little bit more focused on that part. But the thing that terrifies me the most about that is that they become too independent.
Okay. I think I see like where you're going with the conversation.
They get way too independent, and then that's when they realize that now they're in their 30s, 35, 36, 37. It's like, oh, I built all of this and I have nothing else here to.
There's nothing to come home to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another overwhelming sadness comes around just because human companionship genuinely is needed.
Mhm.
Like if you're really curious on what happens to the human brain when you're completely isolated, look at what happens when they lock away someone for 20 to 30 to even sometimes even 14 days just in complete isolation. No human interaction whatsoever. You don't even know what time of day it is. It's all dark. It's all day. It's literally there's no window. There's no nothing.
Mhm.
When there's no interaction like that, you go crazy.
You go nuts.
You
Yeah.
literally go crazy.
Mhm.
So having that interaction and having also that staple resource to come home to at the end of the day too is another point that where I hope these young independent strong women that are becoming more entrepreneurial also understand that they're going to come to a point where you're also going to want to have that type of family as well because that's just human nature in
Yeah.
general. This is the way humans interact, the way humans are. Is every single human like that? No.
Mhm.
But I say for a good majority, like 70, 80% of them,
Yeah.
you're going to want to eventually come home to something.
Yeah. I think it's just the odds of, and that's a great point. I think it's just the odds of that person finding that person that's right for them. And you're right in the sense of, and I've definitely seen that with the younger generation, like specifically of women that are more entrepreneurial, more goal oriented in the sense of like getting the degrees and going to college and like making something of themselves and not necessarily being dependent on somebody else. And as much as I am very much for that, for men and for women, there's a level of it that comes where it's like you're doing those things, but you kind of also have to be like looking at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And when you're looking at the same time, it's you don't make it your whole focus. You don't make it your entire focus or even half of your focus. It's supposed to be just like in very small like tidbits. It's like, oh, I'm going to the gym. Like if I see someone that like say like just take the gym for the example. I see someone that's cute, like maybe they're like kind of girl I would go for. Like I see them here kind of often, like not too often. Like maybe she comes in with scrubs on. Maybe she's a nurse. Maybe she's like whatever it is. Like you kind of try to scope out like whatever it is that person kind of has going on for themselves, and then you're presenting yourself in a way where it's like not necessarily like you're the best option for them, but it's like you're just trying to be more social. You're trying to put yourself out there more
Yeah.
without being like throwing yourself at somebody else and then that person just being very overwhelmed
Yeah.
by you. I think it's difficult when people just do just the career thing And then that's when they look back when they're like in their 30s and they're like, oh my God, like, what did I do? And then they're doing the opposite end where they're not doing the career thing and they're just looking and they're like, I have nothing to even give to this person when I do find the person that I do want, especially from the guys' perspective. Some of them do that so much. They're in the club and they're popping bottles and they're with their friends, and then your friends just start like it starts to dwindle. Not dwindle in the sense like you're losing them, but they become engaged. And then they become family men.
Yeah.
And they have kids. And then you're like, oh, like we're not gonna go to the club. And you're like, dude, I'm like 30. Or like
Yeah.
I'm 32, or like, no, my wife has to go to so and so, or we're gonna go see my in-laws, and you're just like, oh, okay.
My kids got this tonight.
Yeah, like my kids got this game. Like I got to go to my daughter's recital. Like whatever is that's going on. Like I'm seeing that now. Yeah, with our age, because
Yeah.
age is 27. Like a lot of my friends are getting engaged.
And also there is a good portion of the
baby
younger
showers,
the young girls who do also want to have younger families. Like they want to have family, stable young families.
Mhm.
That's where that's another part where I'm fearful as well, is that they invest with the wrong person early, and then again it comes down to end this broken cycle.
Yeah.
But where we go back down that repeating route, 3 things I wanted to ask you. There's 3 different questions, and then each one is basically just like 3 answers. So meaning what are 3 things that you well yeah, what are 3 pieces of advice that you give to anybody right now?
It could be about anything.
Anything. Just 3 pieces of advice that you can give to anybody about anything.
Hmm. That's tough. I'd say first thing in the aspect of career, it's like there's 2 ways I can say that, because I don't want to tell someone to follow what they're passionate in. And I also don't want to tell someone to go where the money is, because you have 2 completely different answers.
Mhm.
You can the best I think alternative for that in the sense of advice is to do something that you're good at when it comes to the aspect of your career. Because when you do something that you're good at, there's a level of it that you will enjoy, and there's also a level of it that you will continue to endure to get to wherever it is that you want to go, to then end up you having enough money to do the things that you love. Like when I think about like the things that I love, like whether it's cars or it's like spending time with my family or like playing video games with my friends or like whatever the hell else, like things that we grew up with or things that you want to genuinely do and enjoy. You may not necessarily be able to get there being some random Joe Schmo basket weaving degree that you decided to get from college, and they may not necessarily pay for. Yeah, it's a basket weaving. It pays.
Took a second to settle in.
It pays for the lifestyle that you want to live. And that's coming from a guy who majored in social sciences. I majored in sociology, but I knew that I wanted to go into either nursing or school counseling. And then the pandemic happened, and clearly I was not meant to be a nurse. That I just could not deal with what was going on in the world. So I was like, all right, you know what? School counseling in the sense of mental health, being there for other people, and students being able to gain their own sense of purpose and their own autonomy and like what they want to do. I think purpose is very important. So in the sense of like that first thing, making sure that your career choice is purposeful. It's something that you genuinely enjoy. It's something that you can see yourself doing. Like if I were to tell you, like ask you right now, like what can you see yourself doing for the next, let's say 10, 20, 15, 30 years? If you can't do whatever it is that you want to do for that long to at least make a certain amount of income that you want to have to at least push you to whatever that next thing is, it's probably not worth your time to do it. But if you do choose to do it, don't make it the most important thing. That can be like how I choose to define for students. Like it's like your major and your minor. But your major is not necessarily like, oh, like you need major in like, sociology, psychology, education, or whatever. Your major in a sense is what career do I want and what is my main focus? And then my minor is something that I would love to do if like money was no object, but I need the major to support whatever this minor thing is. So like say like for yourself, like you're obviously in the fitness industry, but then you have like supplements and things and you work with clients and stuff like that. When you're taking on your clients and you're doing something that you love, there are definitely other things that I know that you love to do that you would want to do full time, but you may not necessarily be able to do full time because it may not pay all your bills for you to be able to do it. So there's something else that you have to do that you're good at, something that you enjoy, whether you enjoy it all the time or you enjoy it relatively to being able to support you in everything else that you want to do. That would be my first thing advice. Find something that you're good at doing. You may not always enjoy it, but that's just life in general because everything is always peaches and cream to get to where you want to go. I'd say second thing, in the sense of relationships and purpose and building something for yourself.
Making you think with these.
I would say the second thing is definitely to understand that when you're developing yourself as a person, you're like when because I think the big thing now that everyone says is like you're growing into or you're developing the best version of yourself. There's an underlying tone that comes with that where people, I think, whether you're man or woman, and you're going on that, whether it was after your heartbreak or you had no heartbreak or something happened to you or nothing happened to you at all, and you just want to develop the best.
All right, guys. So real quick, we're just gonna take a small break to talk a little bit more about the boys over at Cannabolics. Cannabolics started as a CBD company back in 2019 as for NCAA athletes get a clean source of CBD without the risk of THC interfering with their drug tests. So if you are somebody who is in needing of any type of CBD pain relief, or if you're in needing of a quality night's sleep, or just stay focused and a little bit more on the side of attacking your anxiety as well while staying mellow and calm and staying focused at the same time. Go to cannabolics.org and use promo code Welshcare, WELSHCARE at checkout. And by all means, if you want to get a little more on the elevated side, check out the Cannabolics Plus area. And by all means, same code Welshcare. You guys already know where I'm going with that. Enjoy.
Version of yourself. There's a point that comes with self-help books and things of that nature in that topic where there has to be a level of action that isn't always talked about. It's always these feel-good things. You read a couple chapters, you read the whole book, you read this book, then you read this other book because it leads to this book, and it's this never-ending cycle until you essentially put yourself out there and do those things. So when you get to that level of them doing those things, I feel like there's a point where people have to focus on actually doing the work and understanding that every single day isn't going to be easy. There are days when your head's going to drag. There are days when you don't want to get up. There's days when you don't want to be there. And just to endure it and actually go through it because it's going to help you build and grow as a person. But as you are building and as you are growing as a person and you're becoming essentially this, best version of yourself, I think it's important for people to make connections with others. I think when people are on that journey and they're on that self-help train and they're doing what they need to do for themselves internally, they may disconnect and they may isolate themselves from other people, or they may only choose to then put themselves around other people that are essentially doing the same things as them. That isn't to say that you should not surround yourself with people that are like-minded or doing the same things that you're doing, but I do think that it does help when you're around other people that may not necessarily think the same way that you do, because it offers you a different perspective. If you're around people that are always very like-minded and they think the same way that you do, it isn't to say that you won't gain anything from these conversations or you're not around a good group of people, because who am I to tell them whether or not they're a good group of people? But if you're around people that may potentially be different than you, they have something different to offer you when it comes to how they conduct themselves, how they speak, what is important to them. And I think about things like that. Like if I were to, example, put myself in this category, I think of someone that in the very beginning, very straight edge, very gung-ho about goals, very family oriented, very just doing the things that I knew that I needed to do that because it was what was instilled in me in a sense of like values and what's important. If I'm not around the guy who is carefree, could give two shits about what's going on in the world, has no sense of responsibilities or sense of family, or maybe they just don't have to worry about that, or they come from everything is already handed to them, I may not appreciate his perspective and being like, oh, like you have time, like you can just
You can just do what you want.
yeah, you can just go out tonight. Like you don't have to be working all the time. You don't have to be productive 24 hours a day. It's that level of self-reflection and awareness and being able to be accepting and inclusive for other people to understand that not everyone is going to think the same way that I do. Not everyone is going to have the same goals and the same perspective that I have. And not everyone is going to be, I don't want to say always for my best interest because that's more negative context, but they might not necessarily be going for or trying to do the same things that I'm doing. That doesn't mean that you can't meet those people won't take you away from whatever it is that you're trying to do, because if you're purposeful in what it is that you're doing, like I mentioned earlier, it won't knock you off of your purpose. But those, I call them side quests, those things and people that you meet that are along the way in your journey to wherever it is that you're going, I think it's important because it lets you sit and it lets you actually ponder or reminisce and think about all the things that you may probably tell yourself on a daily basis that you don't have time to think about and you don't have time to do or act on. You know, if you're so focused on your purpose all the time and your job and your career and getting to where you need to go, you know, you get nearsighted. Or I think it's nearsighted. I can't remember what side of it is. In a sense of relationships, in a sense of friends, in a sense of having fun in your 20s and enjoying your time and going out and meeting people and trying and failing and doing new things. I think that's what's important. That as my second thing, to focus on what your goals are and doing what you need to do, but don't forget to smell the roses.
Mhm.
That's like my short answer
Okay.
of saying all that. Focus on what you need to do, but stop and smell the roses. Third thing, it'd probably be the point that I made earlier. Um, Everything that happens to you, and I'm a big believer in what's meant for you is meant for you.
Mm.
So everything that happens to you, whether it's good or bad, is supposed to teach you something. It may not be great, it may not be pretty, it may not be sexy, it may not be anything that you intentionally or you want it or expect it to be, because life isn't always supposed to be fun. There are going to be some hardships. There are going to be things that you have to learn. There are going to be things that you don't want to have to deal with that, like, life in many ways forces you to deal with because now it's front and center. It's right here. Like, it's in your line of focus. It's what I need to focus on in this point in time, regardless of whatever situation happens. Whether you lose a loved one, your relationship ends, you lose that job, you start a new career, you move to a completely different city. Those parts and those aspects of life, I would want people to embrace those things. Don't be fearful of change. Be fearful of not changing when that happens. Make sure that you actually want to move forward and doing the things that you need to do, but don't feel like you're coming from this area of like, I'm going to restrict myself and not give all of myself to whatever this new thing is, and then not allow myself to grow and adapt and expand on whether it's your way of thinking, whether it's the people that you allow to be around you, whether it is your experiences that you choose to enjoy or embark on in life. I think there's a level of nuance when it comes to letting different people, or especially new people, into your life. Because as we age, I feel like we just really get settled into our routines and doing things that may be comfortable for us or may like not necessarily be like new and this is like extravagant or whatever the hell is going on. But just making it feel as though that you just want new experiences. And
Yeah.
I think people should embrace new experiences.
Embrace the uncertainty with the certainty of you coming out the other side better.
Yeah. And being comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Mm.
I'd say that. Yeah.
Well, brother, man, I cannot appreciate you anymore. Seriously, like that was some of the most in-depth, deep talks I've had on this podcast in general. I didn't even
Hey.
expect it to go that deep as far as like the mental health part, but
Yeah.
I'm very appreciative of it just because we've touched on so many different topics that are very present in today's world. And yeah, overall, I just really just want to say thank you for everything that you have done for today. Like this is, it was an amazing opportunity to really look into the mentality of where you're at with everything, but also to see exactly how well these students are going to be in your hands. Like honestly, your perspective on life and how you can actually connect with these students also, it's what's going to make you stand out in your field as well. So before we wrap things up over here,
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
no, never a problem, never a problem, seriously. Where can they follow you? And then if they decide to follow your Instagram or things like that whatsoever, if you decide you want to put it out there.
Oh, it's funny because we talk about social media and I'm like barely on anything. Because I hate TikTok and I'm not on it. My friends can
Same.
send me TikToks, so that's
Same.
okay.
I get spammed with people sending me
Yeah.
TikToks all day. I'm not on TikTok. I was on TikTok for like literally a month, and then I was like, "What the hell am I doing?" And I deleted it.
No,
I
I
deleted the
get
app
you.
literally a month later. It was a fun hot moment thing, but nah,
Mm, no,
I'm much more comfortable on Instagram.
gotcha. Yeah, I'm log on Instagram every now and then. It's not very often. I think I post like maybe once a year or twice a year, if
Is
that.
that
But people can follow me at I believe it's barely forgetting my username. Oh my god. I believe it's Life Amazes J, so it's LifeAmazes and then JAY. And it's just my only Instagram. So I'd say that. And then if I actually genuinely want to talk to them, it's actually private page. So then when I see that, I'm like, all right, who's this person? And if they're new, then I'll engage in conversation because, like I said before, engaging in new experiences and like taking those things on.
yeah?
I'll know whether or not that's something good for me.
Because the clips I'm gonna post from here, basically, I feel like people are gonna be able to reach out to you in the future just because you really hit the nail on the head when it comes down to a lot of these uh different ways of actually talking to kids also. Like one of the things when you before the whole going like this thing to the girl who was saying that she wants to look like Kim Kardashian,
Yeah.
where it's like the reason why I act like that is because me personally, I just want to hear I want to look like my best self.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel like like the best self in general. Like basically, I want to be better than where I was before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I want to look like so and so because you can never look like someone.
Yeah.
Because there's no exact human body that is the exact same detail for detail, number for number, everything on the inside and out is there's no human body that is the exact same.
Yeah.
So when going into like that, like now it's like I gotta next time when someone says something like that, I'm gonna take a little step back into my own reflection, basically thinking like, okay, before I react, let me just take a pause and approach it a little differently, other than to say, don't say that.
Yeah. No, I mean, even then, like I still felt that internally, so I'm not gonna act as if like that's such a dumb thing to do because like I'm like, why does this kid feel that way? But I think, and this is probably the last point I'll make on social media. When we think about social media, we always think about it in a negative context. So when you think about for kids, because of the fact that they're constantly comparing themselves to other people, they don't know because they are so young that comparison is the thief of joy, that
Mm,
they're not going to be able to be essentially everything that they look at or they see on their phone or whatever it is that they want because it's just they're constantly doom scrolling, at least what I call it.
doom
But
scrolling.
but
Okay, I like that.
but when you think about social media, I think that there is a positive side to it that isn't necessarily talked about too much. And that isn't to say that you can't look at a picture like say if I saw some guy who had like crazy athletics and he's like this like super lean like crazy dude and I'm like wow like I would love to have a physique like that. That isn't to say that like my physique has to be exactly like his.
Yeah,
That may be helpful and it should take in a sense of like for social media to inspire you to want to do more for yourself to obtain something that is achievable for you. But I think where we get lost in the sauce and essentially is where we look at someone and like I want every single measurement from every single thing about this entire person to be exactly the way I'm supposed to be, and that's what makes it difficult. And
mm,
I think for especially for women, because that's definitely something that they go through, but specifically for guys too, because we're seeing a lot more of this with body dysmorphia. You know, they just don't really have an outlet in the sense of healthy coping skills and them thinking that this is gonna be that thing that's gonna get me this. Like it's like
like what?
them doing something because they think that someone else really likes it, but they're not necessarily doing it for themselves. It's like, oh, I want to look like this because it's going to help me get this girl, or it's going to help me get this whatever. And then for the girl, it's like, oh, I want to look like this because it's going to help me get the attention of, say, like this guy or whoever it is. It works both ways.
It does, and the biggest thing is that a lot of people don't understand what a natural, lean, strong body looks like
Yeah.
without the aesthetics, without the camera lighting, without the extra additional pump stuff or the additional juice that people may be injecting themselves with, or even the God-gifted genetics that some people are just genuinely blessed with.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't necessarily blessed, but if you have a nice, strong, lean body, may not have the most ab definitions, but you have a phenomenal body, a phenomenal physique as far as like you're able to lift, you're able to squat, you're able to do all these things, maneuver your body.
Mm-hmm.
you need to give yourself a little more pat on the back because you're taking the real way of developing a stronger way and not taking the easy route or easier route of injecting something and then to get a better physique faster versus developing a nice stable base and then building up like a pyramid. You know, you're getting the foundations right within your body on the inside between your joints, your ligaments, making sure they're all comfortable and good to go before they lift.
Mhm.
And then over time, introducing heavier weight, and then eventually you start the building, you start seeing that the results you really want to see for your specific body.
Yeah.
It's more important for them to develop and understand, or people in general to understand what a true lean physique and all that stuff is first before they get influenced by what social media really is. It's also another reason why I'm as transparent as I am with how my body is within lighting and everything else as well.
Yeah.
Like there's pictures that I have that like you'll see some ab definition, but yeah, it only wasn't until just recently that I started to have just regular showing some ab.
Mhm.
Like before, I always had belly. I always had just a straight up. I had to flex in order
Yeah,
to
like
see
really
my
like,
abs and all
yeah,
that stuff.
as every guy does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just a quick flex for the gram.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, they're there. I have some
Yeah.
abs.
And then the second you take the picture and then the phone is shaking,
Ugh.
like, yeah, and then you probably take it and then you're, yeah, and then you lose, yeah.
So it's just building a different level of comfort. But
Mhm.
before we go back down on another tangent with this shit,
Yeah.
really just wanted to say again, thank you for everything for today, man. This is going to be an amazing touch point. There's so many different clips that are going to come from this in general.
Mhm.
Uh, if one more time, is there anything else you want to just put out there real quick?
I would say for people to just, you know, no matter what you're going through, understand that, you will get to where you need to go. Whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, I'm not going to get all religious. Some people can say that like whatever is intended for you, whatever God intends for you, you will get to where you need to go. But I want to say, at least for everyone, genuinely, whether you believe or you don't believe, it's that just focus on what's important to you. Don't let someone else define what is important to you. You define what is important for yourself, and not necessarily being susceptible or thinking as though like me doing something is going to make this other person happy. So this is the reason why I'm doing it. There's too many students that I deal with, that I work with. Now I'm going to say deal because I love working with my students. That feel as though that they need to do something for the sake of their parents and other adult authority figures and stuff like that. And not in the sense of like, oh, I need to do well in school because that's important, but doing something because like their parents told them to do it. And I mean that in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to major in this thing because like my mom wants me to major in this. Like, oh, I'm going to do this sport or this club or this activity because my parent wants me to do this. In the sense of when they get older, it's like, oh, me, being a part of this club or society or like being friends with these people that may not necessarily treat me right or may not necessarily have the best interest for me, or maybe I shouldn't be around people that don't actually or genuinely care about me as a person. Just try to surround yourself, because it's difficult, and I understand that it is, to be around people that are authentic, being around people that are genuine, and do things that you authentically and genuinely want to do. Don't just do them because someone else told you to do them. So even if they don't take anything from me today, just do what you genuinely want to do in life. They can completely disagree with me being like, well, you shouldn't be doing alcohol and all this other stuff in your life. But it's like, at the end of the day, someone could be like, no, and just live the life that they want to live.
And
I may not necessarily agree with it.
humans will humans.
Yeah. But at the same time, as long as that person that's happy, I'll leave it at that. As long as that person is happy with where they're going and what they're doing, then I'm happy.
Appreciate you for everything
Yeah.
today, brother.
Thank
Definitely
you.
appreciate you for all the stuff. Like I said, if you guys ever come down to Unique, you guys see him down, don't be shy.
Yeah.
Say what's up.
I'm pretty friendly. My face may not always come off that way, but I'm
Who
pretty friendly.
who you telling? Today.
I'm a pretty friendly guy, I would say. Majority of the time.
All right, guys. It's been Welshcare. Take care.